West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Donald Trump is having an absolute panic attack after President Biden's impressive State of the Union speech. Donald Trump went on his social media platform, which was broken down for most of the night. And finally, when it went back live, Donald Trump started doing post. And here's what he posted. He wrote, "The fake news media is taking crooked Joe Biden's anger and calling it, quote, fiery. That's why they're the fake news. And there's nobody like them." Okay, that's a weird post. Then Donald Trump goes, "If you get rid of TikTok, Facebook, and Zucker Schmuck, we'll double their business. I don't want Facebook, who cheated in the last election, doing better. They are the true enemy of the people." This is just weird stuff, folks. And it's like nonstop post after post. He goes, "That may be the angriest, least compassionate, and worst State of the Union speech ever made. It was an embarrassment to our country." It just starts becoming full projection and confession right here. He has another one. "That was angry, polarizing, and hate-filled. He barely mentioned immigration, or the worst border in the history of the world. He will never fix immigration." It's just wah, 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 wah. And then Donald Trump started posting these videos with these like weird filters on them of President Biden. I mean, Trump's like the most immature, little petulant freaking baby that there is. This is actually a I'm not making this up. This is what Donald Trump's been posting, stuff like, I'm just going to play you a small clip of it because I can't tolerate it anymore. But this is real. Here, play this clip.
"We're going to buy American. We're going to buy America." So trade rules. Buy America has been the law since 1933. Also caps and won't even go into effect until 2025. And by the way, that law was written and the benefit expires in 2025. New electric grids that are able to weather major storms and not prevent those forest fires.
The Republican Party wants to give Donald Trump the nuclear codes. Somebody who's spending the time where President Biden delivered a very impressive State of the Union, a time where we should still try to come together as a nation. That's what Donald Trump was doing. And by the way, Donald Trump had a lot of his MAGAs there during the State of the Union wearing Donald Trump's mugshot on T-shirts when they showed up to the State of the Union wearing American flag bow ties. Folks, that's a member of Congress, a MAGA member, but that is the state of the Republican Party today. It is so utterly shameful. So on the one hand, you had President Biden delivering powerful State of the Union, invoking Ronald Reagan, saying, Mr. Gorbachev, take down that wall, and talking about the spirit of standing up against the Soviet Union, standing up against the threat now posed by Russia and Vladimir Putin. So on the one hand, you have President Biden doing this. Let's play this clip.
But now, assistance to Ukraine is being blocked by those who want to walk away from our world leadership. Wasn't long ago when a Republican president named Ronald Reagan thundered, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. Now my predecessor, a former Republican president, tells Putin, quote, do whatever the hell you want. That's a quote. A former president actually said that, bowing down to a Russian leader. I think it's outrageous, it's dangerous, and it's unacceptable.
And notice the MAGAs there in Congress were not clapping. They're okay with being subservient to Vladimir Putin. And they're all sitting there terrified of Donald Trump, a wannabe fascist who looks up to Vladimir Putin. I suppose those MAGA Republicans you saw there who refused to clap, they would prefer speeches like this where Donald Trump describes our military in terms of noises. Play this clip.
Go. These are not muscle guys here, they're muscle guys up here, right? And they calmly walk to a seat. Ding, 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 ding. They've only got 17 seconds to figure this whole thing out, right? Boom. Okay. Missile launch. Pshing, boom. It's the most
Or perhaps, I mean, it's ridiculous to watch that. Or perhaps they like watching Donald Trump give speeches where he calls Nikki Haley Nancy Pelosi, and he calls President Biden Obama, and then he spends all the time talking about passing cognitive exams and how he loves to interpose the incorrect names because Tricky Nikki, he says, whatever that even is supposed to mean. Here, play this clip.
But when I say that Obama is the president of our country, they go, he doesn't know that's Biden. He doesn't know. So it's very hard to be sarcastic. When I interpose, because I'm not a Nikki fan and I'm not a Pelosi fan, and when I purposely interpose names, they said he didn't know Pelosi from Nikki, from Tricky Nikki. He didn't know. I interpose, and they make a big deal out of it. I said, no, I think they both stink. They have something in common. They both stink. And remember this. When I make a statement like that about Nikki, that means she will never be running for vice president. She will never be running for vice president. Remember that.
President Biden's going to rip that loser to shreds in a debate if Donald Trump will actually even show up at a debate, which I have my doubts. And here Donald Trump praises the January 6th insurrectionists who he created an alternative anthem that replaces the national anthem at the beginning of his traveling fascist circus events that he calls rallies. And he brags about the spirit of them, and he calls the insurrectionists hostages. Play this clip.
They've done to people. You heard the hostages singing. That was the hostages. They're the J6 hostages, I call them, because they are hostages. They're policemen, they're firemen, they're accountants. They're lawyers in some cases. They're put in jail for extended periods of time, for very long periods of time. They're hostages. You heard them singing. You heard the spirit that they had? The spirit is unbelievable. That song became the #1 song. And
you know, and as you see with the post that I was showing you where he's just randomly attacking Zuckerberg, who he calls Schmuckerberg or whatever he calls. And, you know, Trump's out there saying Gavin Newscum instead of Newsom. And it's just like, just grow up, you baby freaking loser. No offense to even babies there. They behave more mature than that. But even Fox had this question for Donald Trump's latest spokesperson about the name calling and just this petulant, whiny, immature, weirdo behavior. Here, play this clip.
Okay, Karen, I've got a complaint. I know the campaign wants to win over Nikki Haley's voters, but I don't think you do that with name calling. For example, I take issue with Trump's new nickname for California governor, calling him New Scum. I don't think that's a good idea. I object to that kind of language. How about you?
Well, I think that what Governor Gavin Newsom has done to the once great state of California is terrible. You see real scum, real homeless people all over the streets.
Are you okay? Are you saying it's okay to bring that kind of language to a presidential campaign? New scum? That's okay?
I think the real problem here, Stu, is the policies of the deranged Democrats from Gavin Newsom to Joe Biden
I think your
that have
campaign
destroyed
has
American
a problem with
communities
language
across
like
this
that.
country.
You don't agree with me, but I think your campaign has a problem with language like that.
Well, I don't think voters respectfully agree with you either, Stu. If you look at the resounding wins that President Trump has received across the board.
You think you're going to win over Haley voters with language like that, do you? You win over moderates and women with language like that? Really?
And language like what I've just been showing you with Donald Trump. Rage post. There you have President Biden delivering a powerful speech. And this is what we've been saying all along on the Midas Touch Network. You got these MAGA Republicans and all these right-wing propaganda networks that just completely defame and lie about Biden all of the time, and all of the things they accuse Biden of are actually what's going on with Donald Trump. So when you get to see President Biden in his element like that, giving a speech, they just can't handle it. And of course, Donald Trump is just totally breaking down right there. So we'll keep you posted if this panic attack escalates even more and it becomes just a complete and utter and total breakdown. But I don't know. I'm enjoying watching it right now. I don't know about you. Put it in the comments how you feel. I'm Ben Meiselas from the Midas Touch Network. Thank you so much for watching.
You are listening to networksradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
Alabama Republican U.S. Senator Katie Britt speaking from Montgomery. A very long response in terms of the Republican response this evening. I should say, just as a matter of context here, I think Alabama has been on everybody's mind in terms of the debate around reproductive rights, in particular because of the Alabama Supreme Court and their recent ruling on IVF. Senator Britt ran as a strongly anti-abortion rights candidate. So that does sort of implicitly spotlight that issue. Obviously, the most, I would say, the portion of her response that took up the most word count, at least, was her talk on the border. And just to contextualize that, she was one of the U.S. senators who was involved in the bipartisan negotiations to create a border bill. And she helped create the bill and then voted against it when Donald Trump called on Republicans to pull the plug on the bill that they themselves had negotiated. We have a little piece of sound from President Biden's remarks tonight that got a very interesting response in the room from the lead Republican senator with whom Katie Britt worked to write the border bill. Go ahead.
In November, my team began serious negotiation with a bipartisan group of senators. The result was a bipartisan bill with the toughest set of border security reforms we've ever seen. Oh, you don't think so? Oh, you don't like that bill, huh? That conservatives got together and said it was a good bill? I'll be darned. That's amazing. That bipartisan bill would hire 1,500 more security agents and officers, 100 more immigration judges to help tackle the backload of 2 million cases, 4,300 more asylum officers, and new policies so they can resolve cases in 6 months instead of 6 years now. What are you against?
He says, what are you against? But you saw just before that, Senator Lankford from Oklahoma.
That's true. Yeah.
He was the lead Republican negotiator, along with senators like Katie Britt, who just gave that long, lurid speech about for the most part, about the border. And you saw Senator Lankford there saying, that's true.
Yeah,
he said, that's true, after President Biden described what was in that bill. Again, that bill negotiated by Republicans, by conservative Republicans. They got everything they wanted. And it was Donald Trump who then called on Republicans to pull the plug on it because, as President Biden made the point in his speech tonight, he thought it would be better politics to not fix the border and instead to just
And remember that Senator Lankford then also went on the floor and said that he was threatened with being destroyed by an unnamed media person. He didn't say who it was, but he received threats for daring to negotiate a bill that conservatives asked for.
It is Friday, the 8th of March of 2024, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef. Precious, the little Yorkie, is our door girl, and she will be seating you directly for our especially special daily special, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. Yes, however brief that Diner of Life may be, in the greater scheme of the cosmos, which in our reckoning not very long ago we called timeless. It was beyond time. Well, time keeps expanding like everything else. That's right. Spring ahead. This weekend, that's where you lose an hour of sleep. And every time this year, just days before this time of year, when we have these time changes, then they give us these articles about how the time change, like losing an hour of sleep, is not only unhealthy, it could kill you. Well, I would say killing you is considered to be unhealthy just by the nature of it. But, we used to think, I'm just dragging along. And then you get these articles about, you're not just dragging along. It's killing you. Well, thanks for letting me know right at the last minute again. Oregon, once again, has to wait on Idaho. And is it Idaho or Washington? But California is part of this, too, so that we can stop this insanity. Except, which is the one that they choose? Not the one that we had like forever. The one that they decided like, hey, let's keep the wheels of industry turning. Well, okay. Just know also that if your company, can't afford robots because you've incarcerated or driven off all of the cheap labor that you had right at your disposal. People who are willing to work and put in the hours so that they could make up for being paid so shitty and treated so inhumanely. Get rid of those people, and then what do you got left? Kids. I got to tell you, kids do not work as hard as people who really want to be Americans. Live the dream. So I guess, boiled down to, a society that really just wants to party. You got one side that says, nope, we're going to crush every dream you have. Dream, shreem. With a bit of racism, misogyny, and everything else. And then you got the other side that says, we want people to live the dream. What do you think this is? Nazi Germany? No, this is America. Party. So it's our choice. You want to live in like a, iron boot society that crushes dreams by putting an iron boot on your neck? Or do you want to live in a society that says, let's party? I don't know. I know who I would choose. And what is it about people who really want to have an iron boot on their neck? I'll tell you what. They think that they're the iron boot. That's what it really boils down to. They want to be the iron boot on other people's necks, telling them, no, you don't. You live your life the way I want you to. Because they really think that all we want as people to have their own lives is imposing, I don't know, whatever it is that we are onto them. And I would say, you're partly correct. We're just trying to get you to accept the fact that you're in America. Why not be an American? Let's party. Jesus Christ. So what'd you think of Scary Brit's rebuttal? Did you watch that? Oh, I had to turn it off. It was so scary I had to turn on The Art of War on the military channel just to calm myself down. That was so scary. And then they also had, I think, Iwo Jima and the raising of the flag, the real raising of the flag in Iwo Jima. And then they decided, I don't know, to have like another like Pacific Theater massacre of the peoples and themselves and everything. That was much more calming than listening to Scary Brit in her kitchen. Wow. And I got to tell you, I haven't been following all the new actors, on the scene and stuff. So I didn't realize at first that Scary Brit was an actress. Now, in the industry, you don't call them actresses, you call them actors. But in this instance, I think she'd like to be called an actress because that's the kind of gal she is. You can tell. But I belabor the point because I'm going to make the point right now. So I heard that she's been in The Handmaid's Tale. Now, I was in the biz enough. I mean, when I say biz, it's not like, making money. But, I got to sit around a few sets and get paid for it. And when I say sit around a few sets, I mean like being an extra sitting on the infield at the LA Coliseum for the filming of Black Sunday. With the blimp that comes in the Super Bowl, that one. Yeah, pretty much just like smoked pot and ate lunch. It was great. Got paid for it too. So I just know enough that in acting, you never want to take your work home with you because it takes an emotional and mental toll on you when you do that. You gotta, in a way, be able to turn off that character so that when you go home, it doesn't impose upon, your natural well-being. Unless you're typecast, and that's the way you are all the time, and that's why you were hired to begin with, so then it's okay. And I think Scary Brit was typecast. That's just my assessment in my little extra bit of Hollywood work. It was a little bit more than just extra, but sometimes, Okay, and to think I walked away from a gig on The Gong Show. I know. Could have made it to the top. Toppest of the top. If I just stayed in The Gong Show. I walked away. And you know why? It offended my sensibilities. And now, at the time, people didn't understand. But I think maybe they do now. All right. Oh, of course, we missed a show yesterday because I took my mother in, as you know, to have her surgery for getting a stent in her carotid artery. And so, good and bad news. The good news is that she's breathing and living and is, fairly alert in some ways. She's a little groggy even from just the, they didn't put her under, but, she kind of slept through it, which was good because you don't want her moving around, which is what I was afraid of. But they were not able to install the stent because the blockage is fairly deep. and the angle of attack was such that every time they put the stent in, it kept getting pushed out. Now, of course, you don't want any of that plaque that's blocking stuff to go into her brain or heart or other places that would like stop her life. But the technology is such that they have, I call it a suction device, but it's something like that. But it backflows the blood so that they're able to keep any particles from dislodging and causing havoc. But because of that, they weren't able to do it. But so she still has a blockage. And my sister asked, a question, and the guy said it'll increase 3% per year, meaning if she's got 90% blockage now, she'll have 93% blockage next year, and yada, yada, yada. And at any time, something bad could happen and you get a stroke. And that bothers me. But this is the quandary that we have when we care for our parents. My first reaction is like, okay, well, what do we do next? And how soon can we do that? And, then I have to step back. I haven't even spoken with my sister about this, but is that the best way to go? Do we want to put our mom through that again? She seemed fairly okay. Now, when I brought that up in front of her, she did kind of look at me because, she just been beat to hell in a way, digging into her neck. She was kind of bruised there too, which is normal for a person like it, for any old person, but particularly my mom. It doesn't take much to bruise her. If you go boo, she'll bruise. Just the pressure of saying boo. Look at that. Don't do it. So she's tough, but she bruises. So we'll see. I just don't want her quality of life, to be drastically diminished. But then quality of life is drastically diminished in a moment when they, pass on the operating table. Because there's always that, too. So we'll see. It's something that you just can't, put off to the side and go, well, we'll see what happens. There's a little bit more proactivity in the midst of it. And the main one, in terms of being proactive, is that for now, keeping my mom calm so she doesn't, blow her top and, have a stroke. She used to blow her top. Who wouldn't? But, so there's that. And like I said, good and bad news. She'll be somewhat how she was. I'll tell you, we were kind of having our fingers crossed that maybe getting more oxygen to her brain would help with some of her confusion and, dementia progression. So, but she was able to identify all of the little things that they asked her, pretty much. She was able to give them the year, the month, and, they showed her pictures of, like a tree and, that kind of stuff. The things that Trump brags about. Except my mom likes to add little stories to it, So, what are these people doing by, what are these people doing by this thing right here? And then you're supposed to say, well, these two people are sitting at a picnic table by a tree. That's essentially what it was. Picnic table, tree. That's what they're trying to get. But, my mom's gives a little conversation that the couple are having, sitting under the shade of this tree. But beyond the tree, of course, is the sun and is beating down, quite a lot of heat. And just my mom. And then everybody's just cracking up. And, of course, we kids go, Mom's kind of making up a lot of stories lately. But she's always made up a lot of stories, so it's hard to tell. So I just had to turn to the team, to the medical team, and say, we've all dabbled and still do in creative writing, and we got it from her. They all laughed. And, well, they should. So in that sense, she seems to be doing pretty good. And ostensibly, I'm going to be picking her up today And also in the midst of it, get the lead in for Black Co's today on Black Co's Week in Review. And it's okay. It's what we do. Yeah, those who are busy get things done, right? Right. So we'll get Mom home today, ostensibly. And I did see some test results that came in online that apparently are coming into her chart, and I'm following her chart. And I'll let my sister see some of the levels. It looks like maybe she might need to be stabilized a little bit more on what's going on with her heart, which is always a concern because that's why we didn't want her to have a very invasive surgery, because it wouldn't be good on her heart. So levels are just, they're not like, going off the charts, but they're a couple of them kind of ticked up. A lot of in the normal range and, smack dab in the middle of the normal range, which is good. But there's a couple or a few ticks into, minus or plus that might be a bit concerning. So we'll see. Hopefully we bring her home today and get her settled back in. And that's how it was. It is today on the 8th of March, 2024. So what do we have in store for you here in the Bistro Cafe? Oh my gosh, I've just gone off. All right, in the Bistro Cafe I looked at the time. Excuse me. Anyway, it's Friday. All right. Well, at the top, we already went through, Trump being Midas touch, went through how Trump is just going off. He had a panic attack overnight because he knows who he's up against. And all the lies they got themselves to believe in have been dashed tragically, dangerously. Now, if the guy had gone through some therapy, which I don't know, maybe he has. But the overarching term for that is that the guy just suffered some dissonance. Yeah, some dissonance indeed. And the rest of his MAGA cult have suffered some dissonance as well. Which means now the gaslighting begins. They're going to tell their people what they saw is not really what they saw. On the rest of the menu, speaking of Alabama and scary Brit, Alabama Republicans pushed through an anti-DEI bill and a limit on absentee ballots. Well, that's nice of them. Now, Oregon passed campaign finance reform that limits contributions to political candidates. Oh, we're commies. And a bill on DeSantis' desk would allow Florida public schools to make use of Christian chaplains on campus. Wow. It's what the founders originally intended, apparently. The founders of some Christo-fascist state. Not America. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Turkey struggles to stop violence against women after at least 71 have been killed so far this year. And voters are being asked to change Ireland's constitution that says a woman's place is in the home. So take that, scary Brit. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Such an overly extended lead-in. We're going to tuck right into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And it is by staff, or from staff, at the Associated Press. Republicans in the Alabama House of Representatives on Thursday yesterday advanced a bill that would prohibit diversity, equity, and inclusion programs at universities and state agencies, and another to put limits on absentee ballot assistance. Oh, how nice. Representatives approved both bills on a 75-28 party line vote after Republicans moved to cut off debate. Both measures returned to the Alabama Senate for senators to consider House changes. Republican lawmakers across the country have pushed initiatives that would restrict diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, also known as DEI. The Alabama debate laid bare sharp differences in viewpoints and politics in the House of Representatives, as white Republicans said they are trying to guard against programs that deepen divisions, and black Democrats called it an effort to roll back affirmative action programs that welcome and encourage diversity. And of course, the Alabama Republican senators say, damn right, or representatives. Okay, well, a bill would prohibit universities, K-12 school systems, and state agencies from sponsoring DEI programs defined under the bill as classes, training, programs, and events where attendance is based on a person's race, sex, gender identity, ethnicity, national origin, or sexual orientation. No, Cinco de Mayo for you! Their effect on college campuses, as well as K-12, is to deepen divisions, set race exclusionary programs, and indoctrinate students into far-left political ideology, Republican Ed Oliver said, in a ridiculous character made up totally on the spot right now. Now, Representative Given, a Democrat from Birmingham, called the legislation Alabama's attempt to kill affirmative action in a state with a long history of racial hatred and discrimination. Claire Rush of the AP brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Oregon lawmakers gave final passage yesterday, Thursday, to a campaign finance reform bill that limits the amount of money people and political parties can contribute to candidates. Following recent elections that saw wealthy donors inject millions into key state races, Oregon is currently one of roughly a dozen states that has no limits on campaign contributions. Under the bill, starting in 2027. Why wait so long? Individuals and corporations can only give up to $3,300 to statewide candidate per election cycle, while political party committees can give up to $30,000. So-called membership organizations such as labor unions and nonprofit advocacy groups can contribute a total of $26,400 to a statewide candidate per cycle. Limits would be lower for non-statewide candidates running in legislative, district attorney, or circuit court judge races. Political parties and membership organizations can donate up to $15,000 and $13,200 respectively to such candidates. The $3,300 limit for individuals and corporations remains the same. To promote transparency, the bill also directs the Secretary of State, starting in 2028, to create an online dashboard that lists the 100 largest contributors to candidates or campaign committees and shows how much money industry groups donate to candidates. And we're looking at you, Coke Industries. us this vital offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Florida school districts could opt to allow volunteer chaplains in schools under a bill the legislature sent to DeSantis over the objections of opponents who argued that religion should be kept out of the schools. Yeah, I guess it's because we're woke. We're woke. Supporters argued the legislation will provide another resource for children and pointed to chaplains who serve in other government roles such as police or military chaplains. The legislature also hosts a chaplain of the day when it's in session, and there's a non-denominational chapel in the state capitol, but don't you dare be, I don't know, the flying spaghetti monster guy. Think you're going to be given a convocation then? I don't think so. It does surprise me about the controversy because we have had chaplains in our public institutions for centuries. My mother was asked if she would like to have the chaplain come by and give her a little bit of spiritual counseling and stuff, and my mom said, keep them away. Opponents said children could receive bad or unwanted spiritual advice or feel uncomfortable because they may not share the same religious beliefs. And that's why we have a separation of church and state. And I just wish that all these originalists who've decided now they're not going to care about originalism would at least accept the fact the Establishment Clause says there is no official religion. There are 3 branches of government, and your religion is not one of them. Okay, I got it off my chest. Let us now go to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, let's get together and feel all right. When thinking about Bob Marley One Love, I wonder not about directors, writers, or actors, but about the people behind the movie and what they wanted. Because One Love is the Marley family's film. They produced it. Hell, Ziggy Marley himself introduces it by thanking you for coming and assuring you that he was on set almost every day. And how intimidating must that have been? But I imagine that, being popular musicians, the Marleys understand well the dual nature of commercial art. And it's something that you see in the movie. It's not what it's about, but you see it. You've got your story, you've got your mission, you've got your message you want to get across, but you've also got to sell a crap ton of records. And thus, I see 4 content lines in this flick. There's the very focused, almost slice-of-life biographical story, bookended by 2 free Jamaica concerts in 76 and 78 that are supposed to end the violence between warring political parties. And in between those concerts, because of the violence, Bob Marley and the Wailers leave Jamaica and end up in London, where they write and record Exodus. There's what I call the flashbacks of firsts. Bob and Rita first getting together, Rita taking Bob to his first Rastafarian ceremony, the Wailing Wailers recording their first record with Lee Scratch Perry, etc. There's the recurring dreamlike sequence of young Bob in a burning cane field. And then there's what started this consideration with me, the music in Bob Marley One Love, which to me felt less integrated into the movie as a whole than in other music star biopics. Especially the first 3 musical moments. They just hit me as gratuitous, and I couldn't shake the feeling after that. Like someone saying, okay, we gotta have the tunes, because everybody loves the tunes. They're coming to hear the tunes, want to see Lindsay play Bob playing the tunes. I mean, Legend is one of the top-selling albums of all frickin' time. Gotta have those tunes. I don't know. I just hope the family got what they wanted, which was probably to tell their story and sell a crap ton of tickets. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is the story of a very special woman. In a matter of seconds, she turned herself into a great mathematician or an entrepreneur. Her knowledge was limitless and still is. She could also make monsters disappear, especially those that lurked in the shadows under the bed. Once, this woman put back together a teenage girl's broken heart, which had been shattered in 1,000 pieces, just by giving her a bear hug. She masqueraded as a regular person at work, but as a superhero at home. Everyone knows her as Gabriella. I still call her Mom.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need to help, complete with tips and resources at aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
A light moment, perhaps, during a blatant attack on freedom of the press. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. In Oklahoma, State Senator Nathan Dahm has introduced a bill oxymoronically titled the Common Sense Freedom of the Press Control Act. Freedom of the Press Control Act? The proposed law would prohibit any media outlet in that state from publishing or broadcasting unless all the writers have received a license from the state government permitting them to be journalists. Can you say 1984? All writers also would need to complete an 8-hour or longer course titled, ironically, a propaganda-free safety training course, which the law specifies would be developed and taught by PragerU, which describes itself as the world's leading conservative nonprofit focused on changing minds through the creative use of digital media. Wow. The reporters also would be required to take quarterly drug tests. Say what? And also secure $1 million liability insurance policies, which, if they could get them, would make them the target of lawsuits. The managing editor of the Johnston County Sentinel, John Small, correctly characterized the bill as an egregious violation of the First Amendment. The editor added that some journalists in Oklahoma, including him, think the bill's sponsor, Senator Dahm, as he put it, may be a couple McNuggets short of a Happy Meal. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. You may know that March is Women's History Month, but did you know why it takes place each year in the month of March? It all goes back to today in labor history. The year was 1857. That was the day that hundreds of women working in New York City's garment industry went on strike. The women demanded better wages, safer working conditions, a 10-hour workday, and equal rights. In the years that followed the historic strike, March 8th became an important time for women workers to rally in the city. So on March 8th, 1908, a crowd of 15,000 women workers in New York took to the streets. The marching women demanded the right to vote, an end to sweatshops, and a halt to child labor. At the International Socialist Congress in 1910, a German woman named Clara Zetkin proposed March 8th be declared as International Women's Day. Women from 17 countries agreed, and over the years, the day continued to hold a special place for women in the labor movement. Women from Bangladesh to South Africa to Venezuela have held demonstrations for workers and civil rights on this day. By 1980, President Jimmy Carter declared the week surrounding March 8th Women's History Week. His declaration read in part, "Too often, the women were unsung, and sometimes their contributions went unnoticed. But the achievements, leadership, courage, strength, and love of the women who built America was as vital as of the men whose names we know so well." In 1987, the week was expanded, and March became known as Women's History Month. And it all started with garment workers who were not afraid to stand up for their rights, leading the way for countless numbers of other women who have bravely followed in their footsteps. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 29 degrees Fahrenheit. Yikes. Though we're expecting a high of 60, which means, that's how people catch colds or worse. Foggy conditions at the moment, then will be mostly cloudy in the rest of the morning, then sunshine for the afternoon. Winds light and variable. Partly cloudy skies this evening will give way to cloudy skies overnight, with quite a bit of rain. Looks like we're going to get about 1/4 of an inch. Winds will be light and variable, then mostly cloudy tomorrow with light rain early, highs in the low 50s. Oh, we're going to bounce up and down in temperature now, eh? Winds out of the west-southwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Looks like we're going to get more than 1/4 inch of rain, and then quite a bit of rain over the weekend, and maybe a drying out period early next week with sun, which is always nice. And then some more rain, so maybe we're heading into spring. In like a lion, out like a lamb. Okay. Looks like pollen is still rated as none here in our little village of Rogue River. The air quality index for the region is in the good range at 41 parts per million, and that daytime UV index is now in the moderate range again, quite consistently at level 4. So take care. Barometric pressure is falling at 30.3 inches. Visibility is down to less than a half mile, and relative humidity is at 100%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world, and that is the Weather Underground. London is 48 degrees and fair. Paris is 58 and partly cloudy with a flood warning. Rome is 56 degrees and partly cloudy, also with a flood warning. Bagram is 32 and clear. Hong Kong is 53 and cloudy. Tokyo is 39 and fair. Melbourne, Victoria, Australia is 65 degrees and clear. San Francisco, California is 52 degrees and fair. Chicago, Illinois is 43 degrees with rain. And New York, New York is 48 degrees Fahrenheit and fair. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Asa Weeding and Susan Frazier of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Muharrem Evesil was stabbed to death by her estranged husband at her workplace in Istanbul, where he had repeatedly harassed her in breach of a restraining order. Sound familiar? The day before, authorities detained him for violating the order, but let him go free after questioning. Once again, sound familiar? More than a decade later, her sister believes Evesil would still be alive if authorities had enforced laws on protecting women and jailed him. As long as justice is not served and men are always put on the forefront, women in this country will always cry. Doesn't that sound familiar? Evesil's murder in 2013 became a rallying cry for greater protection for women in Turkey, but activists say the country has made little progress in keeping women from being killed. They say laws to safeguard women are not sufficiently enforced, and abusers are not always prosecuted. Sounds so familiar, doesn't it? At least 403 women were killed in Turkey last year, most of them by current or former spouses and other men close to them. So far this year, 71 women have been killed in Turkey, including 7 on February 27th, the highest known number of such killings there on a single day. The Secretary General, Fidan Ataselam, attributed the killings to deeply patriarchal traditions in the majority Muslim country and to a greater number of women wishing to leave troubled relationships. Others simply want to work outside the home. Turkey was the first country to sign and ratify a European treaty on preventing violence against women known as the Istanbul Convention in 2011. But Erdogan withdrew Turkey from it 10 years later, sparking protests. Erdogan's decision came after pressure from Islamic groups and some officials from Erdogan's Islam-oriented party. They argued that the treaty was inconsistent with conservative values, eroded the traditional family unit, and encouraged divorce. Familiar? Erdogan said he believes that men and women were not biologically created as equals, and that a woman's priority should be her family and motherhood. Tragically familiar.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Michael Keeley and Jill Lawless of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. According to Ireland's constitution, a woman's place is in the home. But Irish voters will decide today, on International Women's Day, whether to change the 87-year-old document to remove passages the government says are outdated and sexist. The twin referendums are on deleting a reference to women's domestic duties and broadening the definition of the family. While many women and men support the amendments, others say the proposed changes are confusing and could have unintended consequences. The first vote deals with a part of the Constitution that pledges to protect the family as the primary unit of society. Voters are being asked to remove a reference to marriage as the basis on which the family is founded and replace it with a clause that says families can be founded on marriage or other durable relationships. If passed, it will be the 39th Amendment to Ireland's Constitution. The second change, a proposed 40th Amendment, would remove a reference to women's role in the home as a key support to the state and delete a statement that mothers shall not be obliged by economic necessity to engage in labor to the neglect of their duties in the home. Oh, really? Good. About time. It would add a clause saying the state will strive to support the provision of care by members of a family to one another. Well, we could be moving backwards. Let's not. Let's move ahead, just like Ireland is doing. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and the week, but we will return here on Monday for River City Hash Mondays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day, all night, and all weekend for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we will meet up here on Monday, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.